Welcome to this training session on the best fit tools for SAP Business One users. Our agenda for today, we're going to have a look at the B1 Usability Pack. We'll also mention a few of the other BOYM offerings, and at the end of the session we will allow for some questions and answers. So let's jump right in. What is BOYM and why do we think it's a best fit tool for SAP Business One? Well, the best way I suppose to think of BOYM is as a Swiss Army knife. So think of it as a multi-tool device that you simply cannot do without. And what I'm going to show you this morning is how BOYM can help your users to realize and fill those little gaps, missing functionality, whatever it may be, to just make the user experience that little bit more pleasant. So we're going to have a look at the usability pack and concentrate on the following functions. And the first thing we're going to look at this morning is the dashboards, and we'll come back to the others once we've had a look at that. So let's go straight into SAP Business One, and I've already logged on to my company, and you'll see the dashboard is open, and there's quite a few tabs at the top, various functional areas or modules that we can have a look at. So what we do is we can have a look at the sales one, and the first thing I want to show you this morning is how easy it is to modify an existing one. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and open up the dashboard editor and choose my tab and select edit. Now what I'd like to do is change the top 5 customer report into a top 10, and to do that I need to change the source and tell the SQL script that I want top 10 customers instead of 5, and I'm also going to go into my design and change the name of the report to top 10 customers. As simple as that, and now instead of 5 I should get 10 customers on my report. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and now I should be able to just close the dashboard editor, go back in and reload, give that a few seconds, and my top 5 should now be my top 10 customers. We can add extra tabs to the top, we can add extra reports and graphs, etc. We can also use existing widgets that are on the list of widgets, and what I'm going to do is just add one of those in. So quickly show you how simple it is to do that. And what we're going to do is just move these out of the way, make some space on the dashboard, and now we've got an area where we can add something in. I'm going to go back to the settings, add new widget, and if we scroll down, there's a few little widgets that we can pick from. I'm going to go ahead and add the world clocks, and it's complaining about not enough space, so we'll go ahead and make a little more room for it and move some things around. And let's move it a little bit more. There we go. Add our widget, and we can resize that to fit nicely on our desktop. But the next thing we're going to look at this morning is the toolbox. Now to get to that, we're going to go through the menu, and under our B1 Usability Package module configuration, we'll find the toolbox configuration. Now the toolbox is a combination of a lot of popular customizations that a lot of customers ask for, and so what they've done is put the most popular ones together and make them available straight away without you having to go and write your own rules to achieve these simple little tweaks. So what I'm going to look at this morning and concentrate on is at the document level. And in order to explain what we're trying to achieve, I'm going to go ahead and open up a sales order. And you'll notice that the first field that is automatically selected is the customer code. Now, many users find it difficult to have to keep switching to the name because I want to try and find by the name and not by the code. So we can set that to be the default in the system simply by saying start in the name field for all of our documents. So we close the sales order and reopen it. You'll notice the first field that's in focus has now been changed to the name field. I'm going to show you one more example of the Toolbox configuration. Another nice little feature, which is really going to save a lot of time and effort, is the go to new. Now, what is that all about? When we in a sales order and we add one, and I'm going to quickly just add one over here, and let's select our branch, put a date in, and choose an item, and let's make sure we've got enough inventory on hand. Now, when we click on the add button, the standard SAP behavior is to stay in add mode and make the form available to the next document we want to add. But what if I don't want that? What if I'd like to stay on the document I've actually added so that I can straight away email, print, or possibly use the procurement functionality to add a purchase or a production order from the sales order? Well, we can achieve that by making a little change. So if I click on add, you'll see my document is gone, it's been committed, and I'm now back in add mode, ready to add the next document. To go back, I'd have to go back using my navigation, or if I know the number, I could go and find that document that I've just added. So that's an extra step that's involved. So let's go ahead and turn this function on, and you'll notice if we go on the little dot button on the right hand side that we can turn this function on and off for individual document types as well. I'm going to leave it on all of our sales documents and update. And let's go back into add mode and see what the effect of that selection is. So add our item, and as we click on add, the document gets reloaded automatically, and we're not in add mode, we're back in edit mode. So our document that we just added has stayed in focus, and now we can go ahead and email or print or use our procurement functionality. The next thing we're going to look at this morning is the Master Data Manager. Now, the Master Data Manager is very useful when you want to do bulk updates. And it would be difficult to show you all of the different ways that this could be used and different impacts that it could have on the system. So what we're going to do is once again just focus on our sales order and show you how we could possibly use a bulk update to make a change to a whole lot of sales orders all at one time. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my filter to open documents only. Now, the reason for that in this instance is I want to make changes to the payment terms, and closed documents have probably already been invoiced and might already have been paid, so I don't want to change their terms. And what's happened in this example is we added some sales orders, we gave the customer a specific payment term, a net of 30 days, and after some negotiation, we've agreed to give them a better term. And what we'd like to do is just go ahead and update all of the open orders against either that specific customer or maybe against all customers and give them the benefit of that new payment term. So if we go back to the documents we've just been adding, previously, under our accounting tab, under the payment terms, you will notice that the terms are set to net 30 days for our 2 customers in this instance. So let's go ahead and close that. And what we're going to do is set a condition. Now, in this instance, I already know the field name that I want to change. But if you don't know, you can turn on your system information. So under View, Menu in SAP, View System Information. And if you go to the field and allow your mouse to hover over the field, on the bottom left will be the name of the table and the field. So in this instance, the ORDR table and the field name group num. So I've typed that in, and what I'm going to do now is click on the Find button, and it's going to come back with all the records that are open where that specific payment term is in use. Now, how did I know it was number 2? Well, if we select net 30 from the list, and once again, just allow your mouse to hover over it, on the bottom left, you will see a number 2 before the square brackets. And that is the internal code for this specific payment term. What I'm going to do now is show you how we make the change. So under the Accounting tab, we're going to select the new terms. And before we execute, we could also, if the list is very long, filter it further or tick and untick individual documents that show up on the list. In this case, I want to go ahead and make changes to those 2 documents. So I'm going to click on Execute, just a confirmation. Are you sure? Yes, I am. And execute it successfully. Now if we go back to the sales order, and I'm going to just show you the term is no longer 30 days. It has updated both my sales orders to the new term that we've selected. One of the other nice features in BOEM is the mandatory field function. What we often find with customers is they want certain fields to always be filled or always be populated or selected, and it might not be a mandatory field in standard SAP, but it might be something that your organization simply has to have filled in, and if somebody doesn't fill it in, then it makes life difficult. And one of those is the customer reference number. Now, certainly when you're doing purchase invoices, for example, it's quite important to make sure you fill in your supplier's invoice number if you want the system to check if you've duplicated. Now, if you never fill those numbers in, the system won't have a number to compare to, and it won't block you and say that reference has been used before. On the sales side, you might want to have the customer reference filled in with your customer's purchase order number, and that might be, once again, a requirement where it absolutely has to be filled in. Now, to set that, what I'm going to do is from the customer reference field, I'm going to right-click and go down to Edit Mandatory Fields Configuration. What you'll notice is that whenever you're on a form, if you right-click on a BOEM function, it will automatically populate certain of the fields for you. You could also do the mandatory fields from the menu. I go in down through the configuration, and I've clicked on the wrong one, module configuration, and you could simply use the functions direct from here, but it would not auto-populate these fields. So the benefit of doing it from the document is that certain fields will be filled in for you. So what we're going to do is set a color for the background, and something that's going to stand out. We'll go ahead and use that color. And I'm going to click on Add and tell the system that I would like field number 14 to be mandatory. And we can choose whether we want it to be a warn-in only, or whether we want it to actually block if that field is not filled. going to go ahead and add that and just close the sales order. And you'll see that color has now been applied to that field. And should we now go ahead and add this document and we haven't filled the field in, the warning will kick in as a message to tell you that you need to fill it in. If it's not set to warning, it will block and you will not be able to add the document until that field has been filled in. The next function we're going to look at is the item placement tool. Now, the item placement tool is very handy, especially when you've got user-defined fields. And if we go and turn the view user-defined fields on, you'll notice that these fields sit outside of your form, typically on the right-hand side, even though you could move the user-defined field display around. And this is not always convenient. Sometimes the field that's been added is quite an important field and you'd want to add it onto the main document itself. And the Edit Item Placement tool allows you to do this. You can add fields that do not exist and fields that will not be saved to the database. In other words, they do not form part of the data set. These type of fields could be used just for other purposes on the form itself. These can also get added with the Edit Item Placement tool. So let's go ahead and have a look at an example or two of this. So once again, from the sales order, we're going to right-click and go to Edit Item Placement Tool Configuration. And we'll give that a second to load up. There we go. And once again, it knows that we're doing this for the sales order form because we've opened it from there. And there's the system items. So items that already exist, fields, etc., that you'd like to manipulate, or fields you'd like to add at runtime, which would either link to existing fields and update them, or you have the option of not putting a table and field in and having a field that's purely for display purposes. So what we're going to do is move a field that I think is quite important that sits under the logistics tab called shipping type. And what we'd like to do is move the shipping type field up on top under our document date field. And that way the user will see it and not forget to select that field. So what I'm going to do is have a look at our view system information again to get the item numbers. And in this instance, there's a label to the left that we need to consider. And there's also the actual data field itself. So we have two items to move. And the first item is 122. And the second one is 121. So let's move them both. And we're going to type in our 122. We don't have to put the description, but we'll just type it in anyway. It's nice when you go back and edit to know which field you were working with. What I'm going to do is choose the placement type as below. Now there's quite a few options. You can choose an exact position on the form if you know the exact pixels from the left and from the top. In this instance, I'd like to relate it to another field, which is the document date field. So I'm going to place it below. And then if we hold the mouse over the document date field, that is item 86. So I'm going to choose item 86. I'm going to put it 1 pixel below. And I don't need to fill the other fields because I already know that I'm relating it to another field. Let's go ahead and add field 121. And we're going to do exactly the same, place below. And in this instance, we'll place it below the next field next to it, which is item 46, and 1 pixel beneath it. I'm going to click on Add. And you'll notice that my shipping type field is no longer on the logistics tab, it is now under my document date field on the header where my user can see it and hopefully not forget to select a shipping type again. Now, if you want to reverse this, very simple, go back to your Edit Mandatory Fields configuration. I've still got it open at the back, so I'm just going to go straight in there. And you can navigate through the various ones that have been added. I've only got one, IPT001. You can simply go in, right-click, and remove. And that will undo the changes that you have made. The next function we're going to look at is the buttons function. Now, sometimes the features in SAP are not where you'd expect to have them, or you possibly feel they could be more useful if they were placed directly on the form. And one of those is the generating of Picklists. And so what I'm going to do is open an existing sales order. And if we right-click, we'll see towards the bottom, generate Picklist and view Picklists. And what I want to do is I don't want to have to remember to right-click every time. I'd like to have them as buttons on my form to make it a bit simpler to work with. Now, to do that is quite simple. What we first need to know is what those menu IDs are. And if I hold my mouse over Generate Picklist on the bottom left, menu UID is equal to 6042, and for the next one, 6072. So I'm going to keep those two values in mind because I'm going to need them when we add our universal function. What I'm going to do first, though, is add the buttons. And if we right-click, Add Function Buttons to this window, and wait for the form to open. So the first button, we're going to call that Generate. So we'll keep the name the same as the standard SAP. And quite a few options. I don't want to link it to any existing SAP functions. I want to give it a universal function. And we are going to cover universal functions a little later on in this morning's session. So I won't explain too much about that right now. But what I am going to do is just quickly add this one. And this will be generate Picklist button function. And I'm going to set the type as a macro. And activate 6042 and add. I don't need that function in find mode because typically if you haven't added a document, you shouldn't be able to generate a Picklist for it. I'm going to add a second button. And this one's going to be the view Picklist. And I've already added a function for that. So I'm just going to select that one. Click on Add. Right, so let's go ahead and reopen the sales order document. And on the top right, you will notice we now have two buttons that have been added to our document. And so if we go back to an open document and we click on Generate Picklist, our Picklist form will open up. And if we click on View Picklist, we can view the Picklist from there. So exactly the same functionality as the right click, except we don't need to remember where to find it. Visually, it's on the form and much easier to find, and a visual prompt for the user to not forget to generate the Picklist. The next example we're going to look at is the B1 validation function. Now, what we'd like to do is have a little prompt on the sales order to remind the user that's capturing the order to offer a specific customer a new product line or a new product that we've added. And so what we're going to do is go ahead and open up the BP master. And we're going to do this for a specific customer. And let's go and see if we've got any customers in a specific group. And I think we'll go ahead and choose the high tech. If we go and find, it found only one match. So customer C23900 is in the high tech group. So I'm going to use that specific group as part of my filter. And in this instance, we've actually added a sales order for this customer. Now I'm going to go back to our item placement tool that we used a little bit earlier. And in this instance, we're going to do a UDF line. And I'm going to add a static text type field, which is going to show an offer. So let's place that to the right of an item, item 4, which is my customer field on top. And we'll make it 50 pixels to the right. I'm also going to make the field a little bit taller. So I want to use a slightly bolder font to make it stand out. And because it is going to be a bit of text, I want to make the width a little bit wider as well. And once again, I might not want this field to show up in my find mode. And I don't want it to affect the form mode either. I'm going to make it bold. And I'm going to put it in a green color. Now this is 16 million colors. It's an integer value. I won't go into too many details, but if you use your RGB colors on Google and you search for RGB to integer, you get a numeric value that you can use for any one of the 16 million colors available in the system. Right, so let's go ahead and update that. Now we've added a field. Now I don't want that edit text field. I actually want to make it a static text. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that. But you'll see if we close our order and reopen it, we now have a field called offer sitting at the back. Now that's just the first part of it. We have a field that doesn't show the value that we'd like. And in order to do that, what we're going to do is add a validation. So I'm going to right click and go to the add B1 validation configuration. Quite a few different options depending on what you want to use as a starting point or a trigger. In this instance, we want to use our customer field as the trigger. So whenever we type in a specific customer, we want that field to display certain information. So I'm going to go and choose when this item is validated. We'll give it a few seconds to populate. And if item 54 changes, it will validate. So let's give it a name. And we're going to call this customer offer. And we can set a condition for this. So when there's no condition, it would just execute. And in this instance, it wouldn't look if it's a specific customer or if it's based on a certain item or a certain date, etc. If we gave it a simple condition, we could say if a field has a certain value in it. We could get a little more complicated and use something called an SQL condition, where we could give it quite a complex almost formula, if you'd like, or multi-parameters or filters and conditions. Now, I've prepared some of these earlier, so we don't need to type them all over again. So I'm just going to go and copy and paste that. So the condition that we're adding here simply says, go and have a look if the customer is in group number 106. And if we go back to our business partner for a second and have a look at our high-tech group, in the bottom left, hold our mouse still, group code is 106, and that's the group that we're interested in. So if the group of the customer that's getting entered on the document is group number 106, then select true. And at the bottom, we're going to say, if the condition result is true, go and execute a function. And we're going to add a new function for that. And what we're going to do in our function is we're going to pass the value through to the field with the offer that we'd like to have. So let's just go ahead and call this customer offer. And once again, we're going to use the macro type. And I'm just going to go and copy the text so we don't have to type it. And if we hold our mouse still on our offer field on the top, boy X_1 is the field. And what we want is the following text: offer this customer our new rainbow color printer. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And add the base configuration for that. So let's go ahead and select a customer that's not in the high-tech group. Now you remember that the only customer in our group was C23900. So if we choose anybody else, nothing happens. Let's go ahead and see what happens if we select our customer. And you'll see our offer has popped up. And there's a little visual prompt for the user to tell this customer we have a new printer that we'd like to offer them. The final thing we're going to look at this morning is the actual universal function. Now, we've touched a bit on it in some of the previous examples, and the reason for that is that some of the features we've looked at can use the universal function as a way of achieving what they want to achieve. So what we're going to do is go back to our BP master, and the example I want to show you is how we can use the button on a business partner master to display a SQL report. So what we're going to do is first of all go and add our function button. Call it my lost sales. Once again, we're going to choose universal function for this. And we're going to go ahead and add a new one. So let's call that lost sales as well. So under the type, you will notice that there's quite a few different things we can achieve with the universal function. And I'll just run through them briefly. We won't have time to show you all of them. Content creator is kind of replaced by buttons and item placement tools, etc. But you can still use that function to add buttons and fields onto the documents. You can also use the create activity or crystal report functions from here, the dashboard function, dynamic code. So anybody that's good at writing Visual Basic or C# code, you can write your code using that function. Line loop is very useful if you want to validate the rows on a document. So if you want to loop through from the first row to the last row and find any rows that have a specific value in a specific column, for example, and then pop up a message box, you could achieve that using the line loop function. The macro function is one that we use most of the time, which allows you to just write little macros to manipulate values, find values, etc., update fields, and so forth. The message function is also quite useful, especially when you're using things like your mandatory fields and you want to have a message pop up, then you can use that specific type. The one we're going to use now is the SPL report. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And what you'll notice is that you've got a few extra fields that have been added on the top here. And the first one is form title. And I've already prepared a form title, so I'm just going to go to my text document and just grab that. Now, what I've done with the title is whenever I run the report, I'd like the customer's code as well as the customer's name to display. So once again, just using the standard SAP naming convention for calling our fields, our runtime values, we can actually add those into the title as well. So field 5 is the code and field 7 is the customer name. We can also modify the starting width and height of the report when it runs. So I'm going to make that a little bit wider and make it a little bit shorter. The view type is going to be a grid. And we have the option of also setting a chart. Another nice little feature is banded row color. This allows the report to show every second row or every even row in a gray color. Makes it a bit easier to read the report. Under the SQL block, we're going to enter the actual script that we want to run. And again, I've prepared one earlier, so I'm just going to copy and paste that in. And what we're looking for is the document number, the document date, and the total of the document from the order table. So from a sales order table where the sales orders were cancelled, and we only want that where it's equal to the card code or the customer record that we're currently on. I'm going to go ahead and click on Add and close that. If we close our business partner and reopen it, we should have a button on the top right for lost sales. So let's go and have a look if our customer has any lost sales. Nothing on the report. Let's go into our sales order document. Right click, cancel the document. And now if we go back and rerun, we have a document on our SQL report. There are some other offerings from the Boyum company. We won't have time to go through the functionality today, but we are going to mention them. The first one is print and delivery. And with print and delivery, there's two basic parts to it. The first part is a replacement of the standard SAP print direction. When you print a document in standard SAP, you can set by customer or by user or by combination, and that will find the specific layout relevant to a user or to a customer. Boyum has extended that functionality, and you can start to use things like groups or other fields to determine which crystal layout will get selected for a specific document, specific user, specific customer, etc. Then the other nice feature they have is a bulk emailing feature, something called a mass delivery. A good example of this would be one of your customers wants a copy of every single invoice sent to them at the end of the month in a PDF format. And with the print and delivery, you can achieve that very simply. It does only support Crystal reports, and very, very useful to have that bulk emailing functionality. Another nice feature from the same company is the CRM from Microsoft Outlook. Now, the benefit of having the CRM inside Microsoft Outlook is that you don't have to log on to SAP Business One to use the CRM functionality. You're able to view your opportunities and your open sales documents, etc., directly inside Microsoft Outlook. And then there's another add-on called iPayments, and iPayments is used mainly for bulk generation of credit card payments.